This is Mama Grizzly Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla.
The great Kevin Scholla.
Welcome to the Palin Update radio magazine for April 2018.
Illegal immigration with no expectation of assimilation of the people into our culture or anything else. It's really whack. People are really sick of it.
Thanks for joining us as we broadcast from the Full Battle Rattle Studios, coming to you anytime at mamagrizzlyradio.com and also available at sarahpalin.com. Today we have a very exciting guest. Anna Khait is here. She's a professional poker player. She was also a Survivor contestant. But most importantly, she's an amazing patriot. She has a unique background, a rare outspoken Trump supporter in the entertainment industry. And Anna was born in Russia. So much to talk about with Anna Khait coming up. Plus, we'll see what's happening in Alaska, as well as nationally with Sarah Palin News. And a brand new installment of Liberty and Legacy with Tamara Colbert is on the way from Texas. The Palin Update radio magazine on Mama Grizzly Radio is sponsored by Full Battle Rattle. Full Battle Rattle, helping veterans suffering from combat-related disabilities through the healing power of music. Learn more at facebook.com/fullbattlerattle_ABQ. Anna Khait is here today. She is a Christian conservative, and you may know her from the world of professional poker or perhaps from the long-running hit show Survivor. We're thrilled to have Anna on the show today. And right now we welcome Anna Khait to the Palin Update on Mama Grizzly Radio. Anna, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have such a unique background. I mean, obviously, not many people could say, hey, I'm a professional poker player, and I was also on Survivor. So we want to get into both of those things as we move on. But you have such a unique background in many ways, and we like that about you. Someone who has a lot of jobs and does a lot of things. I appreciate the fact that you're very eclectic in the way you come to issues and look at things. And I think you have that unique perspective. But I want to talk first and foremost about, where you were born and where you're originally from. I know you were only a little girl, but you were not born in America. And I think that gives you a perspective on some global issues.
Yeah, I was born in communist Russia in St. Petersburg in 1988. And my parents brought me here when I was just 4 years old. And so this country has been everything that I've known and was raised as American. And I have an interesting perspective in that my grandparents and great-grandparents have told me stories of their life going through socialism, communism, and then socialism again with Hitler. And so I grew up understanding that socialism and communism is evil. The spirit of anarchy, of the devil, frankly, of atheist mentality, how evil that regime is. And so when I grew up, I was indoctrinated in school as a liberal. So I was a progressive liberal, atheist. Actually, I stepped away from the Lord for quite some time. But I was a capitalist because I understood the ramifications that come with socialism. So that is my, that is how I was, that's my background.
That's amazing. You were only 4, but the fact that you had grandparents, great-grandparents who were there, and I'm sure friends and others who you could talk to gives you that perspective. So when you hear all the talk about Putin and Trump and the whole Russia thing and everything else, you have people screaming and looking for things that aren't there. You have more of a perspective. Plus, all of these progressives that say things like socialism or communism and throw the word around thinking it may be something that you want to apply here in our exceptional country. They don't even realize what it really means, that you would think. Some of them, certainly not like your grandparents do.
Exactly. They have no idea what they are talking about. They are reading history through a lens of history that is, frankly, written by a lot of socialists and Marxists. They are seeing a different type of perspective of it. They're seeing the glory, amazing part. No, there is no, first of all, it's irrational, it's immoral to steal money. Literally take money from the rich and give it to the poor. It's not the way that it works. You don't steal money. You're breaking a commandment by stealing. And it's interesting because I remember one of the reasons what woke me up was in 2015. I filmed Survivor, got back home, and it was something that strange happened to me. I didn't understand it then. I understand it now, that God cleansed me of my obsession with poker, obsession with Survivor, and instilled in me a passion of politics and a passion to talk about it. And I think that the Lord has brought me, and I became a reborn Christian in 2016, and the Lord, I feel like the Lord has brought me here with my understanding of my past history to warn Americans and say, wake up, right? So when Bernie Sanders was running as an open socialist candidate for president of the United States, my alarm bells were ringing. I said, wait a second, what is going on? I know socialism is bad. And so I started doing research, and I started hearing what Donald Trump was saying and how accurate and how truthful he was. I started waking up, and it's scary to me to see the children that are so indoctrinated with the idea of socialism and thinking it's a wonderful idea. They don't understand that you cannot make everyone equal. You cannot make everyone equally rich. It doesn't work that way. What's going to happen is you're going to make everyone equally poor. And then you're giving the power away from people, right? You're taking rid of freedom and liberty, and all that goes with all of your rights when you give them away with your money as well. And, a lot of children just don't understand. They don't understand the history. I highly suggest they go to areas of China, of Venezuela, Cuba is still suffering. Travel around the world and talk to people that are still poor. There's still issues in Russia. There's still terrible corruption there. I love my native country. This is my home. But my native country is still struggling with corruption and the ramifications that came with communism. I mean, one of the biggest reasons why my parents brought me here was, one, my dad is Jewish, and there was a high anti-Semitism during communism, and actually Christians too, but specifically attack on Jews. And so it was hard for my dad to get a job, even though he was able to get into an Ivy League school in Russia. So there was no freedom of religion. But number two, after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, families were given vouchers to be able to buy food and rations of eggs and rice and water. And my mom would wait in long lines with my sister, my older sister. And many times she'd be out there 5-6 hours in this line in the freezing cold, and she'd get to the end of the line and they were out of food. So my mom would come home many times empty-handed. So my grandparents survived on one potato a day during Hitler and his occupancy in certain areas of Russia. And so, my parents brought me here for freedom. And so actually it's a nice story. One of my mom's earliest memories when we came to America was when my sister asked my mom, she took an apple out of the fridge and said, "Hey mom, can I have this apple?" Because in Russia we had a rule. We would always, I was too young, but my sister had a rule that she had to ask before she ate anything. She'd have to ask, "Can I take this banana? Can I take an apple?" Because many times we didn't have it in the fridge. My sister one time found one in the garbage when she was younger. And anyway, so we'd always have to ask. And when my parents brought me to America, and my sister asked if she can take an apple out of the fridge, my mother said, "In this country, you will never have to ask me again."
Wow!
Never have to ask me again. And she says it still with the story with tears in her eyes, because this is the American dream. We don't realize this is the best country in the world. And I'm so grateful that I'm here.
So great.
But it's scary what's happening.
And I've said it so many times that, when we talk about the wall and we talk about illegal immigration, and the people who this bothers the most are those who have come to this country legally. We've had so many guests here, as well as friends and others. I've presided and emceed over naturalization ceremonies. It's the greatest thing in the world because everybody's doing it the right way, and they love America more than a lot of people who were born here. Yet we're told, open borders and the whole thing from the left, and a lot of the Republicans sit back and let these things happen. So, it gets a little, or a lot sometimes frustrating. But let me ask you this. How close were we really? You're painting a picture of Russia. We talk about Venezuela, these other places. How close really were we? What kind of a bullet did we dodge with Donald Trump beating Hillary Clinton? Because you look at the things that the president has done so far, and from the Supreme Court, and just his stance on almost everything so far. Just flip those to the polar opposite. If Hillary Rodham Clinton is the president right now, I mean, do we even recognize this Constitution, let alone this country?
Forget it. We dodged not just the bullet, we dodged a tsunami that would have came across this country, both spiritually and economically, and everything would have went with her, including the Constitution. It was very clear that when Antonin Scalia was killed or died, when we lost that position where Hillary, one of her, we know very clear that she would have appointed a liberal judge, and that would have been the end of this conservative view of our Constitution, and that would have been the end, frankly, of our Constitution. She would have came after the Second Amendment. I mean, we would have had firearms banned instantly. I mean, imagine if the Florida shooting would happen and she was president, it would have been abolished. The Second Amendment would have gone. The First Amendment then would have gone. She would have abolished our Constitution for sure. And we dodged something massive. And God gave us, and I truly believe that Donald Trump is God's anointed, Isaiah 45, where he's King Cyrus, right? So Cyrus back in the day, the Persian king who rebuilt Israel. Donald Trump is rebuilding America. Isaiah 45. He is the 45th, and he is our modern day Cyrus. And God allowed grace for the next 4 years, hopefully 8 years, if we continue to pray for Donald Trump. And as we see he's keeping his promises, it's probably going to be 8 years, 8 glorious years. And so God gave us time to prepare. Because one of the biggest things that happens with socialism and then communism is the first thing, I'll give you an example of what the Bolsheviks did and actually what Hitler did and what Mao did. The first thing that socialists do when they take power, the first thing that they do is they come after the guns.
Yep.
Okay, that's what happened in 1917 in Red October. They came after the guns. Okay, The second thing that they did was they slaughtered people. They didn't just slaughter they slaughtered Christians. They went to churches. They said, denounce Jesus Christ. And there were many martyrs that came about during that time. They slaughtered farmers, anyone that was independent, that didn't care about the government, that didn't listen to the government, that weren't indoctrinated with socialism. Those people were slaughtered. There were millions. There was about 8 million Russians that were slaughtered. That socialism, communist idea traveled from Russia all over the Soviet Union. 60 million people died in the Soviet Union under this umbrella of this demonic, unholy spirit that traveled across Europe. And we've seen it with Hitler, the same idea, this cleansing, this getting rid of faithful people, Christian people, Jews, right? So it is... I know, it's so clear to me, and God has shown me that we dodged a massive bullet in this country with Hillary Clinton. As we all know, she did not even have a concession speech ready. She did not have a speech ready because she wasn't supposed to lose. But God stepped in with his glory and his power, and she did not win. A witch did not get into, and I don't say that lightly, she did not get into the White House, and we were glorified with God's hand where Donald Trump stepped in. And we can see he's rebuilding this country. He's standing for laws, illegal immigrants. I'm a legal immigrant. My parents waited online. We were able to come here because of the anti-Semitism in Russia. Thankfully, this wonderful country let us in. And you're absolutely right when you talk about citizens and, I should say, immigrants that love this country, that want to come here and help and give whatever they can for this country. This past summer, I visited my home in Brighton Beach in Brooklyn, where I was raised, a very Russian community in Brooklyn. And I actually went there this summer to witness their graduation. And they were so excited. They were standing up there on stage, graduated this community center with the English language. They were graduating that school of teaching Constitution and teaching the English language. A lot of them had obviously very thick accents, and some people really didn't know many words. They were still learning, but they were so proud to stand there with their hand on their heart, sing the Pledge of Allegiance, they would repeat poems, and it was so beautiful. They read the Constitution. I mean, people that love this country. And Donald Trump is right when he says we should let in people that love this country, that don't want to harm this country, that want to add to this country. There are wonderful immigrants all over Europe, Italians, Germans, Russians. There are wonderful people that want to come here from Mexico, that want to help their family. You have to come here legally. We have laws. We have to follow them.
So, Anna, just to clarify, so you mean that big crowd that was crying when Trump won, waiting on election night, they didn't want to see creepy Podesta come up there and say something weird? They were waiting for Hillary that night? I got you. Okay.
Yeah, they were. Exactly.
Clarify that. I love the Isaiah 45 reference. I mean, 45th president, right? And also, I mean, if you dissect it, right, whose right hand I take hold of. I mean, okay, you have a right hand, but also maybe, right politically. I mean, there's a lot in there you can take a look at,
absolutely.
And that's really cool. You talk about Nazis, you talk about stripping the power, and in order to get that power and control, and the power being guns and the ability to defend yourself. We've seen it here too. It was the KKK who wanted to take guns from all black Americans. So, when people talk about this, I mean, let's let this sink in for a moment, okay, folks? People in America, American schools and American teachers allowed American kids to basically protest our Constitution by walking out of school, and American parents of those kids applauded it because the American media told them it's wonderful. So, that's why people like yourself, it's great that you're speaking out and have such backing, meaning your unique background, in order to say, hey, I'm not just speaking here and, I don't have talking points. This is from your own experience, your grandparents' experience, and, being well-read and from the history of the whole thing. Now, you have a show, or you did, and you still will, but YouTube apparently didn't like what you were doing. Can you tell people about your website and about the show and where it is right now and why?
Sure. Well, my website is annakhait.com, which is my name. And so I had the Anna Khait show that I started in end of 2016. And so I wanted to, the beginning of 2017. I specifically wanted to reach the youth because I have a lot of fans that were of youth that came from Survivor. So I would say the majority of my fans were ages from 7 to 15, and they would email me all the time. And I was one of the only outspoken conservatives from the reality TV world and Donald Trump supporter. And so I'd constantly get emails, and I started a show specifically to start dripping information of not just conservative values, but also really the purpose was to start dripping God, because I had a reborn experience in 2016. And so, I would cover politics. I talked about God. And the last 2 episodes, I covered child sex trafficking. I had an expert, Liz Crokin, on there, who is an independent journalist who covers sex trafficking around the world, especially in America, consistently. And so she's been doing this for years. She's an expert on the topic. She's had plenty of stories go viral where she exposed John Podesta and a few others, and Hillary Clinton. And so she was on my show, the last 2 episodes of my show, and she was supposed to come on a third one where we were going to go deeper, but she specifically talked about not just sex trafficking, she talks about the connection between child sex trafficking and the occult and how evil it is in Washington, D.C., and Donald Trump's speech in Pennsylvania, where he talked about the evilness in Washington, D.C. That's what he's talking about. I mean, there's other reasons too, but she was talking about that, and we were supposed to come on a third time, and YouTube, I didn't have any warnings, I didn't have any flags, never had any strikes, nothing. Usually you get 3 strikes throughout. On YouTube, I didn't have any of that. I didn't even get a warning. I didn't even get an email. They took off my show. I didn't even find out until I went in the back end through YouTube wondering, wait, why am I not getting notifications? Normally I get notifications, someone, subscribed or something. My show was growing. I was on air for about 4.5 months, and it was growing rapidly. Some of my videos had 40,000 views, 50,000 views, and And they just deleted my channel, and all of my videos went with it, and as if I never even existed. And I couldn't help but laugh, to be honest with you. I wasn't even upset because God prepared me, told me it's going to happen. They're going to delete me. I just didn't know it was going to happen so fast. I wasn't happening in 4 months.
Waiting, yeah. I know that feeling. I know that feeling. I'll click on social media. I'll click on the show sometime. And every once in a while, if something goes wrong, that has nothing to do with that, there's that trepidation. You start to say, oh, did they get us? Is Obama with binoculars through that weird ivy that he is in his picture,
Mm-hmm. Right. And I wonder if I call it pedotube. I don't call it YouTube anymore. It's funny that Freudian slip, but that's how I call them. If YouTube, I'm surprised that YouTube doesn't want people to talk about child sex trafficking and raise awareness for the children that are abused. And that, the biggest crime in the world, not just this country, is not drugs. It is, number one, is sex trafficking. It's the number one biggest crime in the world. If you talk to police officers, they know it. They don't announce it on TV. People don't understand it exists. White slavery is real. And it's not just whites, it's blacks, but it's slavery, bigger numbers than we've ever seen in history. It's proposed about 20 million slaves, children, adults, every kind of ethnicity all over the world, coming from Singapore, coming from Philippines, coming from Haiti, coming from many different countries. And, we were exposing it and we got shut down.
Well, obviously it's a worthy thing to talk about, and you would think that that's something we could all, back, stopping something so disgusting and awful as that. But, this just paints the picture of what really matters to them, to the left. Right. It's just like the gun situation. They're not out there protesting guns, with the all the kids in Chicago that are killed every night. They weren't out there talking about guns when Steve Scalise was shot. They're not talking about guns, when so many other cases. But when it fits their narrative, they jump on board. They do it with weather, too. They wait for a big hit, and then it's the global warming week. Same thing here with guns. Right. So I think that's probably part of what you ran into here with the trafficking. Well, yeah, they want to do that. But if you are allowed to keep speaking on that, guess what people who actually listen will figure out? Left-wing candidates are not cracking down on things like that. And that is something that no one, you would think, would be able to support if they knew that. Because if anybody really knew the Democrat platform, you would think that they would get less than 5% of the vote because it's so far out there. And that's one of the issues that they're not doing anything about. I know Chris Smith, a Republican, has been great on that issue, but there's a lot of people, who just look the other way on that. I wanted to mention Survivor. I watched it since, the inception. And, I always liked it. I always kind of wanted to be on, but I worked for CBS technically for a long time. And
ineligible. Okay.
Yeah, ineligible.
You don't allow, But
let's say, cards on the table. Now I technically don't because of a sale of a company. And you know what? My distaste for insects still would probably keep me off of Survivor. That's a tough game. What was it like for you? Was it tougher than you thought? And, I think it's a God thing for you, too, because look at all the great things you got out of it and all the wonderful people you've been able to reach that you mentioned.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that was a time right before I actually came to the Lord. So it was wonderful that I was able to fast because I was forced to fast and not have any food. It is exactly the way that you see it on TV. It is real. We are starving. We are miserable trying to sleep on bamboo. Mosquitoes are a real thing. I mean, in terms of there's no netting, there's nothing like that. I mean, you'd go to sleep and the thing that you hear all night long before you fall asleep is right. So, I mean, we were in Cambodia filming Survivor Ko-Rong season 32. And so that was a real issue, especially for me. I mean, everyone was sound asleep. Everyone had pants on. I had shorts on. So I was chewed up alive. But I have to say that it was a wonderful experience for sure. And it was a blessing. It was tough, but I have to say, I remember leaving, and my mother, who has a Christian Orthodox religious, told me that she's going to be praying for me, that her friends, nuns are going to be praying for me. So I have to say, even though at that time I didn't believe, I felt such peace. I felt really strong. I felt I felt like I had a sound mind. I felt everyone was lethargic, especially the girls in my tribe were very lethargic, but we weren't eating. And I naturally have a lot of energy, so I was able to continue to have energy, thankfully. And so, yeah, I felt a sense of peace, even though it was really difficult. I felt at peace. I know that the Lord was looking over me. I fasted for those weeks that I was there, and I got home, and like I said, God cleansed me of my obsession with poker and Survivor. I feel like there, because I don't watch a lot of TV. Survivor was like the one show that I would always watch, and have to say it's real, and it was so much fun, and I'm very competitive, so I love physical competition, so that was amazing, and it was wonderful. I had a great time. Wonderful time.
Well, she's no Jeb Bush. She's very high energy. And we didn't even talk about poker. We'll have to do that another time. Such a unique background, but it's so cool how you have talked about God here. You have talked about Jesus, and someone who you admittedly an atheist, progressive,
Obama,
whatever you want to call it. And, this is like the thief on the cross. I mean, it's sometimes more impressive when, it's wonderful when someone grows up in a Christian household and is, walks that path their entire life. But it's so cool when you hear a story like yours. And not only have you come to know the Lord, but here you are out unafraid to talk about it. And that's what's really appreciated because, things like that are looked down upon by a lot of people in this society today, or at least they want us to feel that way.
For sure. And actually, I have felt the wrath of not just the liberal Survivor community and fans and my colleagues and all my friends. I've also felt that from the very liberal poker community, which I adore them. I pray for them. And I have to say that it was really, really hard at first. I've never in my life experienced such hate and death threats and friends of mine that would just say untrue statements about me. And but I feel, and this is why I'm stronger now, is because God allowed me to go through that, build a shell in his armor. And that's why I'm so vocal, and that's why I'm not scared, because fear is the spirit of the devil. It's not the spirit of God. And so I don't fear anything. I live my life open, and I have the Lord right on my heart. It's very visible. And, we have to be the light in this world, and we cannot be afraid to talk about him, because tough times are coming. The end times are coming. Many say that we are in the beginning of the end times. And so it is going to get worse. And, I have to say one thing and I really have to say this, because I feel pulled to really say this. When I was in after Houston flood, my friends and I went out there to volunteer, and what we saw there was terrible. I mean, the infrastructure, but forget about that. It was the people. It was what was left over. It was anarchy in the streets. I mean, there was curfew 4:30, and especially where we went to was really, really dangerous. People were trying to rob us and asking us if we have weapons and guns. It was very obvious they're trying to lure us off and rob us. But I have to say that the Lord spoke to me really loud that day. And he told me, I brought you here for a reason. I have to show you this. You have to see this. My people are not prepared. He kept saying, my people are not prepared. So we do have this glorious 4 years, hopefully 8 years. I'm not going to say 4. I'm going to say 8 years, because I do believe he's going to be enough of 8 years. We're going to have this time of surplus, right? Back when Joseph was around in Egypt, the Pharaoh, we are having the 7 years of plenty. We have to prepare ourselves, because the Lord, people are not ready for the tribulation that will be coming. And so this is the time where we prepare, not just physically and have food and all that stuff, but spiritually. The churches are not prepared. His bride is not prepared. So I'm going to leave it on that. So that's a big thing that I think the Lord wants me to share.
No, Anna, it's powerful. It's awesome, and we appreciate everything you offered us on the program. And you're welcome anytime. Let's talk again, I hope, okay?
Yes, I'd love to. Yes, thank you.
For more on Anna Khait, visit AnnaKhait.com. Now it's time for Sarah Palin News, headlines, and more about Governor Palin. Sarah Palin calls for the VA to be fixed now. What the zuck? Palin calls out Facebook for its great big failure. Palin fights for freedom of speech. Would Governor Palin run for office again? We get an answer. Palin weighs in on immigration and our precious Second Amendment. Condolences to the Popovich family. Palin writes on Trigg's big 10th birthday, "Happy birthday, son. We live for your joy and laughter, and we love your love of animals. Love your whole family." Palin shares my Mama Grizzly radio interview with R. Lee Ermey after Gunny passes away. Palin features my Breitbart piece on the Rhode Island Rams, a little girl, and our national anthem. And the governor gives an amazing, heartfelt speech at a New Jersey Right to Life dinner. To read about all of these stories, visit the Mama Grizzly Radio Facebook page. To see any of the governor's posts in their entirety and to read her devotionals, visit Sarah Palin's Facebook page. Follow her on Twitter at Sarah Palin USA. Check out her Instagram, Sarah Palin 97. And, of course, be sure to visit sarahpalin.com.
Now, the Palin Update with Kevin Scholla presents Liberty and Legacy. Here's Tamara Colbert.
As primary season begins in earnest, political pundits are going to be telling you that America is too divided, and they're going to suggest this way and that way to fix it. But for those of us on the right, those ways always end up in us losing liberty. The left will tell you the Constitution's antiquated and the Second Amendment no longer works, while the right seems dead as a doornail, gutless, neutered. For those of us who consider ourselves to be constitutional activists, we find politics utterly futile. Why? Because for those of us on the right side of the aisle, we thought that by giving the Congress, the Senate, and the President to the, quote, right people, everything would be okay. Well, I thought the Republican version of utopia that all the right policies are going to get passed. Everyone on the R side of the aisle will work with the president to get his Make America Great Again agenda working for us. And that there finally will be a day where we could put Democrats in their place. Boy, how little did I really, really understand, because we are seeing quite the opposite. Instead, here we go. What's black is white, up is down, blue is purple, whatever. Instead, we have high schoolers leading protests and walkouts against the Constitution and the Second Amendment and anything else. And of course, you can't walk out or have a protest against Planned Parenthood and murdering babies. But here's what this is. It's a farce. Am I supposed to say, "Here's all my guns," Mr. Camera Hog, 17-year-old high school snowflake who's never held down a job, barely wiped his own butt, disparages and denigrates his parents on national television, and I'm supposed to kowtow to this little peon? Not on your life, you little snowflake. You need to get a chance to see how the real world works and then come back and talk to me after you've had to pay your taxes and get a job and pay your own way. I am so tired of the left telling me what I should and shouldn't do and what's good or isn't good for me. Thank you very much. But I'm a free American citizen, and I would like to find out that for my own self. Scott Rasmussen had a great article recently that talked about polarization and how it distracts attention from the reality that politicians are less important than they think they are, and hides the truth that the culture leads and politicians lag behind. Polarization, he says, is not a cancer on the body politic, but it is the lifeblood of politics. And that politicians grasping for power and money need polarization to pose as heroes, protecting their voters from the, quote, other side. Unfortunately, that polarization binds many to the common ground that we share as Americans. As a nation founded upon the ideals of freedom, equality, and self-governance, our common creed is really two things. That most of us believe we have the right to live our lives as we see fit, as long as we respect the rights of others to do the same. And number two, that we share a nearly universal desire to create a better world by working together in community. Of course, that's the best use of our individual freedom. If the swamp had its way, though, you and I would have to surrender our guns, our freedom of speech, and everything else, and we would have done it a long time ago. Because the swamp and the bureaucracy, it always has been and always will be how much of our lives and wallets they can control, which will ultimately, they think, keep us in line. That is the slow creep of the progressive left. Hence the term progressive. It is gradual progress, slow progress, baby steps progress towards handing over the keys to all of our freedom and tearing up the Constitution, which the left would love to witness. But Scott Rasmussen's bigger point is that real leaders work through a variety of solutions every day, really far away from Washington, D.C. and Beltway politics. Those leaders understand that governing our daily lives, let me be clear, doesn't come from a politician in a faraway city or any swamp creature inside the Beltway. But real leaders is how each one of us conducts our daily lives as we work, play, and live together with each other in our communities. We are the servant leaders. And who are they? I'm a mom. I am a full-time employee. I have a job. But individual Americans and families, community groups, churches, fire departments, entrepreneurs, small businesses, anyone willing to help build our communities so they are strong and prosperous, free and self-governing, are servant leaders, believing in those common values that we do share. Rasmussen's final point was that America is so much bigger and better than our politics. Our political process may be divided and dysfunctional, but our nation's not. And thankfully, the leadership that we experience in our everyday lives can help bring us together. That means being nice to your neighbor. That means having a friendly word. That means just being yourself and taking the lead on how you want your community to be. I just have to say, Governor Palin, thank you for being that kind of leader. You have been a leader against all things swampy for almost a decade. It's hard to believe it's been a decade. You are a leader and a shining light for those of us fighting against the deep swamp and the bureaucracy and all those other crazy swamp creatures inside the Beltway, the snowflakes on college campuses, the losers in our community that are one person trying to tell us that it's their way or the highway. We must be willing to stand up for truth with a positive attitude and a smile, and I just applaud you for continuing to do that. Thank you so much for everything that you have done and continue to do for our nation. We appreciate you. And of course, the Colbert twins say hello. That's it. That is what it amounts to. It's time to be that good neighbor, be that servant leader, and stand up for what we know are the real American values that a majority of us share. Until next time, have a blessed week. I'm Tamara Colbert for Mama Grizzly Radio.
Tamara Colbert in Texas. Tune in for more Liberty and Legacy on the next edition of the Palin Update. And to learn about Convention of States, head to conventionofstates.com. The Palin Update, including Liberty and Legacy, is on demand and available for download. So just head to mamagrizzlyradio.com, pick the show you want to hear, and you can listen anywhere, anytime. You can also tune in at sarahpalin.com. Well, that'll just about do it for this edition of the Palin Update radio magazine on Mama Grizzly Radio. Visit mamagrizzlyradio.com for continuing coverage of Governor Palin. Also, like Mama Grizzly Radio on Facebook and follow along on Twitter at Mama Grizz Radio, at Kevin Scholla, at Tamara Colbert, and at FBRABQ. And I'm doing some writing for Breitbart News. Go to Breitbart.com and search Kevin Scholla. I'm also contributing at sarahpalin.com, honored to be working on the governor's incredible site. I want to thank Tamara Colbert and everyone here at Mama Grizzly Radio. Thanks to Anna Khait, and thank you for listening today. A special thanks to our sponsor, Full Battle Rattle. Visit facebook.com/Full Battle Rattle ABQ. The Palin Update is produced by Lena Anderson, the Andy L. Kramer, and Lorianne Lewis. Please be sure to join us again next time for another edition of the Palin Update radio magazine on Mama Grizzly Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla. Have a pleasant day.